Hello, I'm Noel. This is Antonia from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company, and this is another Box Tail Scoop. Wheel. That's the futuristic one. Just for now, we won't keep it forever. Just maybe for January.
Okay.
This week we're going to talk about something slightly boring, to be perfectly honest, but it's the truth about what we've been doing this week. I guess it's not something we talk about all that often because we tend to concentrate on the creative side of things. But basically this week we've been working on the other part of running the company, which is kind of the business and the financial side of things. So that's what we've been doing. We've been doing the accounts, we've been doing the planning, we've been doing all that stuff. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. If that sounds terrifically boring to you, and if it's not something you're interested in, then we are going to be going back to talk about A Christmas Carol in a few videos' time probably. We've got some really lovely video of the show and some fantastic photos from the show when it was in the main house at Cheltenham. So at some point we will have a proper look at that, and we can show you more of that video, but that will come a little further down the line. For now, at the end of this video today, we're just going to put a few more of the production shots up at the end. So if the idea of business and finance sounds terrifically boring, you could just skip to the end and have a quick look at those if you like.
That's my cue.
That's your cue.
That's my cue, sorry. I wasn't very on it. By the way, I've got a blanket on my knees and my scarf. It's absolutely freezing in here today. So I'm sorry, I look like a little bit like an old woman, but it's cold and needs must. Yeah. So yes, so we've been doing businessy stuff, and I think that it's important in a way to recognise the fact that even though you work in a creative industry, and most of your time, a lot of your time obviously is spent doing lovely things like making puppets and set and costumes and shows and whatever, there is a good portion of your time that's spent doing the business side of things. And I think there are also times when you have to make decisions based on business sense rather than what you want to make decisions on all the time is obviously the artistic merit of something. And we try and make sure that we don't compromise artistically what we want to do by having to make business savvy choices, but nonetheless there is a balance to be
It's a balance,
had. This week, as Noel said, we've been catching up on the accounts. We let them slip a little bit while we were doing the show because we really didn't have any extra hours to spare. So that is literally data entry. You're talking making a spreadsheet from the bank statements into a spreadsheet, logging all the receipts, then double logging it then into an accounting software. It's basic data entry really, but it's very important because as a charity we have to file official accounts and annual report, and we have to account for every little penny that we spend. Of course we do, because otherwise we couldn't be registered as a charity.
And I also think it's an important lesson for us.
Yeah.
If the creative side of things is what you want to do, and that's what comes more naturally to you. I didn't know anything about double entry bookkeeping before we started the company, and now I know. I don't know everything about it. Yeah, I know at least 4 things about it.
Yeah.
But it is an important side of it because it teaches you to make those decisions, and it teaches you to keep track of those things, and it teaches you what you can afford to spend, what you can't afford to spend, and
how to manage budgets and all that sort of thing, which is very important.
Not least important.
If you want to get any sort of funding for any projects, then you have to show that you can manage budgets. You have to show that you can keep detailed accounts. And it's important because it means that you don't just fritter away your money on things that perhaps you don't really need. I mean, we when we started off the company back in whenever it was, 2012, I think.
Yeah, 11,
12.
Yeah.
We didn't have any money to start it off with, and we've said this before. So the whole kind of basis of the foundation of the company was built off the idea of using very little to create something magical. We say don't be wasteful, be creative, and that's very much carried through into the work now. And although we make slightly bigger shows, and Christmas Carol being the biggest show we've made yet, we still maintain that principle. So we tried, obviously, given the year we had last year, we had to be careful with the budget for the show. We couldn't overspend. We tried to use recycled things as much as possible. We tried to use things that we already had and repurpose them. And we did pretty well. When we looked back at, I had to account for all the spending we did on that show yesterday, and we were pleased because we had been frugal. We'd maintained this sort of and I think given everything that happened in 2020, obviously for arts companies financially it's been a huge struggle. We had our own struggles differently from, every company would have struggled in similar and different ways. And obviously we lost most of our income and we're still having to pay out for certain things. We're lucky in that we are a small team, but one of the sad things about it was that we had actually started to expand at the beginning of last year. We'd employed a wonderful administrative assistant to work part-time for us, and we were starting to consistently make shows with more cast members. And I think that, that was sad to have to have we've had to backtrack. We've gone back really to the roots of the company.
I mean, it's last year for everybody has had a bunch of different challenges, but certainly for the company, it's meant that you really have to draw on that idea of making the most of everything that you have and really, doing whatever you can with that. We have had to scale back in a lot of ways, and Christmas Carol, I don't know whether you mentioned before, but we'd thought about doing Christmas Carol a long time ago.
Yes.
And we'd always dismissed it because it was a show with a lot of characters, it was slightly more complicated, and we felt like we would maybe need more cast members for it. And even when we were discussing it originally last year, the plan was to have 3 people in it.
At least.
At least 3 people, yeah. And obviously due to many of the, not just the financial constraints, but also the kind of logistical things.
Trying to make us COVID safe as possible and all that sort of thing.
We ended up making that show with just the 2 of us. I'm incredibly proud of it. I think it works fantastically.
Yeah,
I'm
and
really
in fact,
pleased with the result, but
there are certain things in it that wouldn't have happened were it not for the fact that there were only 2 of us, and there were creative things that came out of it that were wonderful. And in fact, I don't think it would have been the same. It definitely wouldn't have been the same show with 3 people. No. And it's a wonderful show, and we're so proud of it.
But nevertheless, you come back to that thing of don't be wasteful, be creative. And last year, certainly financially and in many other ways, was a real test of that, because suddenly you find that you have lost all of this income. So what can you do to keep things going? What can you do to keep things moving? And what can you make with what you have?
Exactly. And I think we've then, obviously this year starting the way it has, we're having to carry that through very much. And I think we've had to make the decision for a while that we're going to keep the shows minimal in terms of cast. We're going to have to keep it to the 2 of us for the time being, not just for financial reasons, but also because of the fact that when everything is so uncertain, we don't want to involve another person, get them rehearsed and ready, get them excited about a show, only for the show to be cancelled and for us to have to say, I'm sorry, but we haven't got this work for you now. And we always like to make sure that we pay people properly for their time and all that sort of thing. And the idea of potentially not being able to do that is just it doesn't feel right. And so we are going to keep, we think, for now at least, that was one of the sort of business decisions we had to make this week.
Yeah, so part of what we've been doing this week, we've been looking back at the accounts and seeing where we are financially, and what that means for the next few months and for the rest of the year. And then we've also been making plans for exactly what we're going to do. We were working very focused on Christmas Carol, and that was our main focus up until the end of that run. Now we're into a new year, we're still in a lockdown, so we have to think seriously about what comes next.
And realistically as well, about when we might actually be able to get back into theatres, whether we do need to consider making sure that we have something that is suitable for the outdoors again, like we had with Little Grim doing it on the beach in August last year. So those are the decisions, and we very much have used the sort of motto of what have we got that we can make use of. And we have a catalogue of shows that are in the store ready to go in their trunks that do just involve the 2 of us, that we could pick up at any point. And so we are very much now considering what we can do with the things that we have.
Yeah. And how can we update those shows? Yeah. How can we bring them up to speed with the way we work now and things we've learned along the way? What can we do to kind of make them just that little bit better and possibly
and
be ready?
Fill slightly larger spaces, which is what because obviously the company's grown since the time when they were created, so we want to kind of bring them to now, and how we can do that with as little spend as possible.
So that those shows are ready to go the moment it's feasible for us to do them, whether that's outdoors or in a socially distant space or whatever it might be.
So that's where we are really, and that's what we've been doing. And I think we will continue to have discussions like that for the next few weeks to firm up exactly what we think is, and have multiple plans for the year, because we don't know what's going to happen. But nonetheless, we're trying to stay positive and remember how fortunate we were to do Christmas, how fortunate we were to do some shows, and let that sort of push us into this year, keeping creative and all that sort of thing.
I think it's always a struggle in January. You have a tendency to look at the end of the year as being the end of something. So having gone through all that lockdown stuff, you kind of go, oh, we're at the end of the year, everything's going to be better now. And so to be in the same situation is tough.
For everyone.
Yeah, for everyone, yeah.
So yeah.
You're just looking for a way to...
Forge ahead.
Yeah, forge ahead.
Forge
Exactly.
ahead. So that's that really for this week, and that's what we've been doing. We will go back, as Noel said, to some more. We've got wonderful footage, as you said. We're going to go through it. We're going to try and show you maybe some compare video footage with the R&D week, some of the really early ideas.
Yeah, because we've got video of
rehearsals,
rehearsal, so it's nice to sort of make that comparison of where an idea came from and how it looked in the end on stage.
It would just take us a little bit of time to go through that, I think, and pick out the right bits. But there will be some production photographs now that you won't have seen. So if you've skipped ahead to the last chapter, hello again.
We don't blame you.
We don't blame you at all. Here are some nice photographs. Have a lovely week. And as usual, if you haven't already, please do.
Yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, leave us a comment. That would be great. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.